Well, thank you very much for the introduction. And I want to thank Joel, because as I just said before, I learned a lot. I'm not an expert, and some of the things that I've learned I'll convey to you. Okay, as Joel mentioned, Holocaust Memorial Day was actually 27 January, just last week. And as you can see, it commemorates the anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz concentration camp. And normally it's an international day. The UN does this. Within the United States, we have Holocaust Remembrance Day, and this year it's 8 April, different time. And what Holocaust Remembrance Day signifies is the start of the Warsaw Rebellion, the Warsaw Ghetto Rebellion. So they chose the liberation of Auschwitz, and the State of Israel and the United States chose the start of the Warsaw Uprising. Just to let you know that. There was just an article in the paper, some of you may have seen it, Holocaust Remembrance Day, and I know it may be a little hard to read, so I want to read what I highlighted. Israel's main Holocaust memorial is in the spring, as I just mentioned, marking the anniversary of the uprising of the Jewish ghetto in Warsaw, Poland, against the Nazis. Interesting what Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said. He said, the lessons of the Holocaust have yet to be learned. What, quote, what has changed is the desire to annihilate the Jews. What has not changed, excuse me, has the desire to annihilate the Jews. What has changed is the ability of the Jews to defend themselves. And I think we could see that in the news every day. So let's look at the historical perspective first. Where are we as a Jewish population in the United States and in the world? Well, in 1939, there were 17 million Jews. 1945, 11. You do the subtraction, and you're down 6 million Jews. In 13 years following the Holocaust, it only grew by one Jewish population by 1 million. It took another 38 years to grow for another million. The Jewish population growth has slowed down over the past 40 years. And this is interesting, even if the fertility increased by 0.4%, we'll add millions of Jews over the next 50 years. Not happening, though. Just not happening. Again, we have about 13.3 million Jews. Now that says it was in 2001. I got statistics you'll see later, another 100,000 or so more. Not very much, not very much. So in 2001, 8.3 million Jews lived in the diaspora. That's the whole world outside of Israel. And 4.9 lived in million in Israel. About half of the world's Jews reside in America, with about 40% in North America. 37% of worldwide Jewry lives in Israel. Israel's population rose by 1.6. That's good. That's good, but outside of Israel, it dropped by 0.5%. Europe, including the Asian territories, account for about 12% of the total. 2% might be in Africa and Oceania. That's New Zealand, Australia, places like that. Metropolitan Tel Aviv, 2.5 million. World's largest Jewish cities, followed by New York with 1.9, Haifa, etc. Florida, 700, well, at least in southeast Florida, but there's a lot more than that, believe me. Just an overview, real quick. You could see population, and that's 2010. You just add the United States up, and you've got about 11 million right there, and then you add up everything else, you can get to your 13 million without any problem. Germany, $119,000. When you consider that they had millions before that, millions. A couple things. Beginning of 2010, one survey showed there were about 13,428,000 Jews in the world, and that's less than 0.2% of the world's total population. That means that 1 in 510 people in the world is a Jew. So if anyone ever asks you, know that now. According to the estimates, between 1 January of 2009 and January of 2010, the Jewish population increased by about 80,300 people. Most of the rise of number of Jews in Israel is the result of immigration, new births, etc. There's an international immigration into Israel, and the birth rate has increased also, because you're getting younger people coming in, obviously. An average Jewish family in Israel is larger than an average one just about anywhere else in the world. Israel's Jewish population surpassed 5.7 million in 2010. Interesting and very important. It should be noted, however, that the Jewish nation has yet to recover from the Holocaust. Were it not for Germany's genocidal war against the Jewish nation, it's been estimated the total Jewish population in the world would be over 25 million at this point, double what we're seeing now. But what about good old Florida? We all live in Florida. How many live in Florida, by the way? Okay, good. Well, just a real brief history here. In 1973, Jews started moving to Florida. They came to Pensacola.
1763.
Oh, what did I say, 1963? Okay, 1763. They came to Pensacola in the northwest corner of the territory. And of course, more Jews moved in after a few decades. But the Jewish population, it just remained small, a couple dozen. In 1821, the Jewish population numbered about only 40 people, and most of them, of course, lived in the northern parts of the state. I mean, there was nothing but swamps down there before. We all should have bought land in those swamps. But Moses Levy planned a Jewish colony in Micanopy.
It's Micanopy.
Micanopy?
You left off the
Oh, okay.
Micanopy.
Okay, very good.
Northerners
Yeah.
pronounce it Micanopy.
Yeah, right. I guess if you can't tell by now, I'm from Brooklyn. Surprise, right? Where the University of Florida is today. And of course, Florida became a state in 1845 with less than 100 Jews in the population of 66,000. Now, this I just learned. The first U.S. senator from Florida was a Jew, David Levy Hewley. Never knew that before.
And there's also a county named Levy County.
That's right. I never associated that, but yeah.
And it's in that area.
Okay. Let's see. In 1857, Jacksonville, the first institution was there, and that was a Hebrew cemetery. In 1876, Bethel Temple, or synagogue in those days, in Pensacola received a charter from the state of Florida, the first Jewish congregation. So we have something very historic right here, and I've been to that temple in Pensacola many times. By 1900, 6 other congregations were established, and today there's about 750,000 Jews. Obviously, where are they? They're all down in South Florida.
Miami Beach.
Miami Beach, right. I've lived in Miami. I'm a graduate of the University of Miami, in fact. My father got me out of Brooklyn just in time, so graduate there. And Florida, of course, is the home to the third largest Jewish population in the country, and the numbers continue to rise. Jewish influence in Florida continues to be a part of everyday life, and the Jews obviously contribute a lot, we hope, to society. Okay, enough of background. What is Jewish? Is it a race, a religion, or a nationality? Well, it's not a race. It's not a race because we don't share one common ancestry. For instance, Ashkenazi Jews, whoops, what happened? Oh, okay. Thought my eyes were going. That's okay. Ashkenazi Jews and Sephardic Jews are both Jewish. However, whereas the Ashkenazi Jews hail from Europe, Sephardic Jews often from the Middle East. People of all different races have become Jewish over the centuries. Well, is it a nationality? Well, although Israel is often called the Jewish homeland, being Jewish is not a nationality because Jews have dispersed throughout the world for almost 2,000 years, or more than 2,000 years. Hence, Jews come from countries all over the world. Well, we just eliminated 2 of the 3, so all we have left is what it is. And Judaism is both a cultural and religious identity. Being Jewish means you're part of the Jewish people, whether it's because you were born into a Jewish home or culturally you identify as Jewish because you practice the Jewish religion, or both. Cultural Judaism includes things like such as Jewish foods. And when we talk about holidays, you're going to find one thing in common. Most of them are associated with good food. So we like to eat. Include things like the Jewish food, customs, rituals. For instance, many people are born Jewish into homes. They're raised eating blintzes. Those are like cheese-filled little things. They're good. And lighting Shabbat candles. That's on Friday night. But never step foot in the synagogue. Jewish identity is automatically bestowed on babies of Jewish mothers. Now that's according to the Orthodox and the conservative. And we'll talk about the different denominations. I'll call them denominations, or Reform. And please, it is not Reformed with ED. It's just Reform Judaism, Orthodox Judaism, Conservative Judaism. And Jewish mothers and conservative and Jewish mothers of or fathers of, and this is where it gets tricky, according to Reform Judaism. The Jewish identity stays with them throughout their life, even if they don't actively practice Judaism. In the Reform movement, your father could be Jewish, your mother could be Christian. You decide how you want to raise the kid. If you want to raise it Jewish, fine. But in an Orthodox and a conservative, that's not going to work because it takes the maternal religion. Religious Judaism includes the beliefs of the Jewish religion, the way a person practices the Jewish religion, and it could take, as I said, many forms. And that's why we have these 4, I'll call them denominations: Reform, Conservative, Orthodox, and Reconstructionists. I'm just going to briefly talk about it. There's only about 60,000 in the whole United States, what they call Reconstructionist Judaism, Jews. Many people who are born into Jewish homes affiliate with one of these branches, but again, many do not.
What is the local synagogue?
Say again?
Is local synagogue Reform?
It's Reform, yeah,
Reform, okay.
Reform. Although we do have Hebrew is said, whereas in Orthodox, what you're going to hear is Hebrew. That's all you're going to hear. Okay, so now let's take a look at these 4 branches. And, you know, it's really for a religion, religious tradition that's been active over, you know, 3 millennia. Judaism has surprisingly few sects and only 4 major divisions, which can be distinguished. And of course, you have Reformed Jews, and that movement started in Germany in the early 19th century because Europe and Germany was dropping a lot of the restrictions. And of course, there were a lot of Jews in Germany. And so the Jews wanted to be accepted into the society. So they did a lot of things. They abbreviated the liturgy. They introduced prayers and sermons in the vernacular, singing with an organ. Most, if not all, no Orthodox is going to have an organ. I can tell you that now. Conservative, you might find 1 or 2. In the Reformed temple, I've seen organs. We don't have one in the temple, although we have some great musicians and guitar playing and stuff like that, you know, to sing along, but not in the Orthodox. The Jews, they had an opportunity to be accepted into Jewish society without converting to Christianity, and, you know, many of the Jews, German Jews, felt it was okay to eliminate all these tribal and ethnic aspects of and superstitions. They even moved their Sabbath to from Saturday to Sunday for a time, but they moved it back. And they just relaxed the rituals overall, preferring to stress the Torah's teaching and ethics. The Torah is the 5 books of Moses, and it's what we would call the Old Testament. Another big difference between the movements is whether females can be rabbis. Now, when we get to the Orthodox, just what that word means, whether it's Orthodox Christian religion or Orthodox the Muslims or Orthodox Jews, insist on retaining all the traditional laws and customs, not only as they relate to the liturgy, but also to diet and dress. I don't know if you've seen in the paper or on TV, sometimes you'll see these Jews that are dressed with a black hat, black coat, even in the middle of the summer. The Hasidic Jews, very religious, so they keep the dress. They demand full submission to the authority of the halakha. That's the massive accretion of written and oral laws, feeling that that the revealed will of God, not the value system of that particular age, is the ultimate standard. Separation of the sexes during worship. If I go to an Orthodox synagogue, my wife is going to sit somewhere else. And in fact, in Europe, in the synagogues, the Orthodox synagogues, they were behind a wall with a glass, so they wouldn't disturb the men while they were praying. Doesn't happen in conservative and Reformed Judaism. And of course, I mentioned about the Hasidic sects comprise a significant segment of Orthodox Judaism. All Hasidim are Orthodox, but not all Orthodox are Hasidic. And this is the big problem in Israel that we see now. These Orthodox Jews, mostly Hasidim, they don't want to serve in the army, they don't want to do anything but study. Study, 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 and they get help from the Israeli government. Big controversy in Israel. I will say that I read an article just recently where the Orthodox are accepting some women into the rabbinate to become rabbis, but they're not going to be on the pulpit or the beamer. They're going to mainly be teachers and things like that. but there's a slow acceptance, but I don't think I'll see it in my generation. Conservative Judaism, known sometimes as historical, and it began in the 19th century because of the excesses of the Reform movement. Hey, you got all English now? You know, you don't have to wear a yarmulke. You don't have to do this. You know, no, we got to find the middle road. They didn't want to be Orthodox, but they didn't want the Reform movement. So the westernization, you might say, of Judaism, modern dress, for instance, they kept the use of Hebrew, the observance of some dietary laws. Speaking of the dietary laws, keeping kosher in this area at least is almost an impossibility. Keeping kosher means that you don't eat any shellfish and pork and various foods. And therefore I cannot have a bacon, lettuce, and tomato sandwich. I do not keep kosher, by the way. My father was a kosher butcher, and when we were in Brooklyn, we obviously kept the kosher home, because if a customer walked in and smelled bacon, that would be the end of his business. So maybe we did it for selfish reasons, but nevertheless. Let's see here. In the 1980s, the conservatives decided to admit women as rabbis. Interesting. They did it even before the Reform movement did it. Almost about the same time, but they did it first. And the center of movement in the Jewish Theological Seminary in New York. And of course, more Jews are affiliated with conservative synagogues than with Reform or Orthodox. I might mention that the Reform movement trains its rabbis in 3 places. The Hebrew Union College is in New York. There's one in Cincinnati. That's where we get our student rabbi from, and one in Los Angeles. It is a 5-year course. 1 year you spend in Israel, so you can learn the language. Most of them know the language anyhow, can speak Hebrew. But nevertheless, it's a very, very intensive course. As I said, I'm not going to touch on this very much, but, you know, Reconstructionists, the key thing here is that it was an effort, 1922, there was an effort to adapt classical Judaism to current ideas of science, art, and reason. They see Judaism as an evolving civilization rather than a religion, and reject the notion of a personal deities. You know, they think the parting of the Red Sea and the whole concept of the chosen people. So there's only about 60,000. And they're headquartered in Philadelphia, so it's not a big movement at all. Okay, now that we know some of the movements, just what do Jews believe about God? Humankind was created in the divine image, community. Torah, the 5 books of Moses, the land of Israel, the Messiah, and then at the end I'll sum up Judaism by a very famous rabbi who did it. When you learn about a religion, you know, one of the things that people ask is, what do the members of the religion believe? Well, it's difficult to capture the beliefs of obviously every single member, but usually there's some overarching tenets that most members of a group adhere to. And we could say the same about Judaism. However, and this is important, there is no official credo that all Jews must accept. I think within the Christian religion, there are certain things you must accept within the Catholic religion. Judaism is not a religion of absolutes, and we'll see why. Judaism is a monotheistic faith, meaning they believe in only one God. And of course, it's hard to comprehend what that one God is. Nevertheless, it's present in our everyday lives. How an individual chooses to understand this manifestation of the divine varies. Some connect through God through prayer. Others see it in the divine, in the majesty of the natural world. Others may not think about God on a daily basis. So you have an individual relationship with God is unique and personal. Mankind was created in the divine image. Judaism teaches that every person, Jewish and non-Jewish, was created B'Tselem Elohim, which in Hebrew means in the image of God. For this reason, every person is equally important and has the infinite potential to do good, and I might add to do bad also. Free will in the world. People have the free will to make choices in their lives, and each of us is responsible for the consequences of those choices. Community. Well, Judaism believes that Jews are uniquely connected with each other regardless of where we live in the world. So we're all part of a global Jewish community, if you will. The Torah. And we'll be mentioning about that again. It's the 5 books of the Bible, the Old Testament. That's Judaism's most important text. It contains the stories, the commandments that teach us about life and death. It contains the 10 commandments, and this is kind of important, as well as 613 commandments called mitzvot. Now, a lot of them the average Jew does not do. There's all kinds of commandments, and not to work on Saturday and stuff like this. Orthodox, believe me, they try and do all of them. They probably know all of them also. All Jews consider the 10 Commandments to be important. In the Torah, though, not all Jews adhere to the 613 mitzvot. I'm not going to go over the 10 Commandments, but the land of Israel, the Torah tells us that the land of Israel, Eretz Yisrael, was part of the covenant made between God and the Jewish people at Mount Sinai. However, there is no one view of Israel among modern-day Jews. And that's surprising. Some strongly support the state. I know many who think Israel is doing the wrong thing in building apartments in Jerusalem. Some defend it, while others feel conflicted by the politics of the region. The only thing that can be said is that Israel is part of everyday Jews' worldview in one way or another. We're all connected somehow to Israel because that's the homeland. Judaism teaches, and now with the Messiah, now we get into some really different beliefs from that of Christianity. And again, I'm not an expert on this, so I'm going to obviously, in the next couple of minutes, use what I have and read. It teaches that one day the Messiah, a person from God, will unite the world and bring peace to humanity. The concept of the Messiah is not central to every Jew's belief system. Some believe it, some don't. But tradition does teach that the Messiah will descend from the family of King David. I didn't mention this, but it always comes up as a question, so I thought I'd address it now. The afterlife. Well, I hope there is one, but Judaism believes in an afterlife, but has little dogma. It's not written down, it's going to be an afterlife, and this is it. The Jewish afterlife is called Olam Haba, the world to come. Resurrection and reincarnation, they're within the range of traditional beliefs. You might find the Orthodox Jew having a little more belief than a Reformed Jew like myself. Temporary, thank God, but not eternal punishment after death is within the traditional belief. And we firmly believe that death is not the end of human existence. However, because Judaism is primarily focused on life and here and now rather than the afterlife, we again don't have a lot of dogma about the afterlife. It's possible for an Orthodox Jew to believe the souls of the righteous go to a place similar to the Christian heaven. They may believe that. Or they are reincarnated through many lifetimes, or they simply wait until the coming of the Messiah, when they will be resurrected. Likewise, Orthodox Jews can believe the souls of the wicked are tormented by demons of their own creation, or that wicked souls are simply destroyed and cease to exist. As far as resurrection and reincarnation, there's been a big controversy about this, as you could see, for 220 years. Some rejected the concept because it's not explicitly mentioned in the Torah, and others say, well, you know, it's sort of implied in different paragraphs. You know, we always hear that, you know, you could prove anything by reading the Bible and interpret it different ways. The resurrection of the dead will occur in the Messianic age, a time, again, in Hebrew referred to Olam Haba, the world to come. But it's used to also for a spiritual afterlife, when the Messiah comes to initiate this perfect world and prosperity. The righteous dead are going to be brought back to life, almost similar to what the Christian's religion would believe, and given the opportunity to experience the perfect world that their righteousness helped create. The wicked dead will not be resurrected. Well, I hate to use the word, but is there a heaven and hell? Well, Jews have this thing called Gan Eden, but it's not the Garden of Eden, believe me. This is not the same place where Adam and Eve were. It's a place of spiritual perfection. Descriptions vary. One source says it, that the peace that one feels when one experiences Shabbat properly, that's at Friday night when you gather the family around the dining room table and you say your prayers and you welcome in the Sabbath, the day of rest. It's merely 1/60th of the pleasure of that afterlife. Other sources compare the bliss of the afterlife to the joy of sex or the warmth of a sunny day. Ultimately, through the living, we can no more understand the nature of this place than a blind person could understand. You try to describe colors. And of course, only the righteous go there, to Gan Eden. The average person, well, he goes down to another place for some punishment and purification, called Gehenna in Yiddish, or sometimes Sheol by other names. Only the very wicked do not ascend at the end of this purification period, and their souls are punished for the whole 12 months. Some say that the wicked soul is destroyed, ceases to exist, while others continues to exist in a state of consciousness of remorse. The 12-month limit is repeated many places in the Talmud. That Talmud is the commentary on the Torah. 6,000 pages of commentary. No, I have not read it. And I don't think I will. Anyhow, it's the morning cycle, so, you know, they associate the 12 months. The Torah, like I said, it is the 5 books of Moses, the Old Testament, and this is a book that we read passages from. I think we're almost near the end of Exodus now, because we read a passage every Saturday, what we call Torah study, and then we read different things from the prophets and the kings and various things, various other books. This is called the Tanakh, the Holy Scriptures, and of course it has the 5 books of Moses in here, the Old Testament, and of course it has the prophets Samuel, Isaiah, Ezekiel, and it goes on and on. And this here I just brought, if anyone wants to look at it after, this is the prayer book that we use at services. And as you could see, there is Hebrew and English at the same time. There's a lot of responsive reading done. A lot of responsive reading.
What's the Tanakh stand for?
Again, the holy books. Yeah.
Torah,
Torah and the commentaries.
Navi.
Not the commentaries, not the Talmud, but just the Torah and the other books, kings, prophets.
Torah, Navi, and Kitab.
I'm not sure on that again.
I'm wondering what Kitab would be.
Yeah, it just says Tanakh, the Holy Scriptures, and that's all I ever know it by.
Okay.
Yeah.
Marty, you mentioned how the Bible, how it opens.
Oh, yeah, by the way, most of you, you notice that if I was to read this book, I'd be reading it from this side, going this way. Pages get higher that way. So it's read from right to left.
Is that in English?
Yeah, we have a lot of English in here, responsive reading, as well as the Hebrew right above it. And the person leading the service has the option of doing either one. And there's 5 different services that he can choose from. Different readings, psalms, and stuff like that. So the Torah, again, somewhere between 450 and 200 BC, it was assembled, and it's pretty close to its current arrangements, that's all. It was sealed in the Christian era with no more additions or changes allowed. It's taught in specifically designated learning centers called synagogues. Remember, as worship by blood and sacrifice faded from Judaism, it was supplanted by prayer and Torah studies. The priests were specifically trained to teach the law and the scriptures. Talmudic studies, deliberate and taught the law in yeshivas, that's Jewish schools, and in medieval and modern times became the center of training for rabbis. Now we have specific training centers for rabbis. What does a Torah look like? Now that's in English right there. Very easy to read. But this is our Torah, and it is actually our Holocaust Torah. This came from Ledik in Czechoslovakia and survived the Nazis. They stored these, and they were going to build a memorial to an extinct race. So the Nazis gathered these from all over Europe, all the other artifacts that went along with Judaism, and they brought them over to Prague, and they stored them, and of course, they didn't have an opportunity to build this memorial to an extinct race. But this is one of our famous Torahs. It's actually on loan to us. We don't own it. We do have another Torah that we bought. Now that here is handwritten. That's just the cover there. That's the scroll. It's rolled up and it's rolled to the portion. It is actually the 5 books of the Old Testament. Now you say, well, that's pretty nice. You could read it, but it's all in Hebrew. Oh, I forgot to tell you, all the vowels are left out. Try reading a book without vowels. A-E-I-O-U. Well, that's the same thing. How would you put, if you saw the word CT, would you know that's cat? Might be something else. The same thing here. Yeah, right, cut. Could be anything, but you better know it's cat if it's in here. Okay, so what happens is someone, a boy or a girl who's going to be a bar or bat mitzvah, when they reach the age of 13, will have to read from this. And they study it, they read it, they could chant it, they have a good voice, obviously, and they get a lot of practice. I am amazed how well our children, our kids do in this. But anyhow, this is a very famous one, And we were quite fortunate to be able to get it because somewhere only about 1,400 of these survived in a condition to be given out. In fact, one is in the White House even. I mentioned the Talmud, another great book. The Talmud really means instruction, learning. It's the central text of mainstream Judaism, considered second to the Torah. It takes the form of a record of rabbinic discussions. And like I said, it's 6,200 pages of arguments between rabbis. You know, they argue about everything. So there are two components, and they were written in 200 CE, the oral law and a second interpretation of the first. So they couldn't even agree after they agreed. So, which is, you know, the old thing about you have two Jews together, you got three opinions. But they study that in rabbinical schools. That's the good thing. Okay, now we're going to come to a sort of a touchy subject here, and it's always asked. I mean, you can't get away from it. There's no sense me trying to avoid the topic, because if I do, you're going to ask it. Common questions. Why the names Jew, Israelite, Hebrew? Well, I guess the best way to say that, you know, you can call me anything, but don't forget to call me for dinner. So the term is used within the Bible. The word suggests descendant of Judah, but Mordecai of the Esther story was called a Jew. Jacob, the father of Judah, was given the name Israel after he wrestled with the angel in Genesis, 32:28. So in Jonah 1:9, it says, I am a Hebrew, and the Jew willingly accepts that designation also. Years ago, your dog tag used to say Hebrew on it. So that was accepted also. My first dog tag when I joined as an enlisted man said Hebrew. You know, nowadays you don't even have to put that on or anything Jewish, because you may be going over to an Islamic country. A Jew is proud to be called a Jew, but if you want to call me an Israelite, a Hebrew, I don't object to any designation. What about Jesus' divinity? Well, unfortunately, and you know, it's hard to understand, of course, the thoughts of many Jews are still colored by the remembrance of the suffering inflicted in the name of Jesus. So that sometimes the mention, especially with the older generation. Now, you know, granted I'm in my 70s, but I don't consider myself the older generation yet. But, you know, as Jews were made to feel less defensive, as a minority group, they were more accepted. And I don't think, you know, there's any problems anymore the way Jews think about Jesus. In fact, a leading rabbi has said, I accept Jesus as one of the great men of history. I accept the religion he preached, because I too am a liberal Jew. Let's remember, Jesus was a liberal Jew. And maybe that's why, you know, a lot of the Jewish hierarchy didn't like him. And he says, but I reject the religion about him. So many people accept Jesus as a significant historical figure. Why do Jews reject Jesus' divinity? Well, mainly because the reference to the divinity and messiahship are merely reflections of the believing church at that time, and does not and not to be accorded historical validity. There is no question that the New Testament, and I was quite surprised about this, is studied in, at least I know for a fact, in the Reform seminaries. There are courses on it because when a rabbi, after he's ordained, he may speak in interfaith conferences and, to cement relationships within the community. And so he better know a lot about the faith, the Christian faith. Do Jews accept biblical prophecy about the Messiah? Well, here many Jews believe that the Messiah is predicted in the Old Testament and that he will be a human son of David, who will be the monarch of a restored Davidic kingdom. Liberal Jews do not believe in biblical prophecy in the predictive sense, and many have discarded all concepts of a personal or physical Messiah. They claim that the prophets were speaking to their contemporary situations and that predictions must be interpreted in their social and historical context. Do Jews accept the blame for the crucifixion? This is interesting because that always comes up. And the Catholics, forget what document many years ago, they said that the Jews are not to be blamed for the crucifixion. Well, Jews do not accept the blame for the crucifixion, although they've been plagued with the onus of responsibility throughout the whole Christian history. Actually, if you think about it, if it is assumed that the Jewish leaders viewed Jesus as a threat to the structure of Jewish law and a corrupt priesthood, because the priesthood was fairly corrupt back then. So they viewed Jesus with fear and therefore was a desire to see him eliminated. And the Jew asked, well, why should I be condemned because of the actions of their forefathers? And the same thing goes if you think about Germans now. Would you blame a German now for what his forefathers did back in the 30s and 40s? No, you wouldn't blame it. Do we take blame for what our ancestors did in the United States for what we did to the Indians? No. We don't feel right about it, but we shouldn't be blamed. So if you had to sum it up, Jesus would be what we would say did not fulfill the messianic prophecies. It says he's going to build the third temple, Ezekiel. Gather all Jews back to the land of Israel, Isaiah. Usher in a world of peace. Well, that ain't happening, not for a while. And end all hatred, oppression, suffering, disease. As it says, nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall man learn war anymore. Spread universal knowledge of God of Israel. Unite all humanity as one. As it says, God will be king over the world. On that day, God will be one, and his name will be one. The historical fact is that Jesus, according to Jewish doctrine, did not fulfill any of these. Now, however, the Christians would counter that Jesus will fulfill these in the second coming. So, Jewish sources show that the Messiah will fulfill the prophecies outright and no concept of a second coming exists. So there is a conflict, and hey, that's why we have the two religions. What do Jews think of Christians? Well, what's the old saying? Some of my best friends are Christians. My two sons married Christians. I'd rather they married Jews, but that didn't happen. That's all. I got one son, one granddaughter who is probably not going to be raised Jewish. I got two that started going to temple, stopped, but they consider themselves Jewish. hey, that's the best I can do. You know, kids live their own lives. The present generation that has known the pogroms of Hitler, the Jew tries to forget the past and avoid malice and to live in peace with all the Christian neighbors. And I think that has happened. I attend lunches with Christian ministers every couple months, you know, and I speak at different churches also. You know. Then we always have the controversy of BCE, CE, and stuff like that. You could sum that up real quick by saying that the authors of the Jewish calendars did not wish to imply they accept Jesus as the Christ and therefore dislike the designation BC, before Christ, and they do not wish to imply that they accept Jesus as the Lord and therefore dislike the designation AD. So you got BCE, before the Common Era, you know, so no big deal there. Do Jews baptize? Well, in a sense, yes. In a sense, yes. It's frequently asked because the meaning of this type is clarified by the practice of traditional Judaism today. It is believed that a woman is becomes ritually clean through immersion, mikveh, which is a form of baptism. Mikveh is a religious bath, you might say, where a woman would go. Now, and of course, it is believed that women are unclean at certain periods of time, so that after that period of time, Orthodox now we're talking, may be conservative, and some that are leaning a little towards the Orthodox. There might be a mikveh at the synagogue or the temple, Now, let's see here. As a means of cleansing or purification and sanctification. Special baths called ritualariums are constructed by Orthodox communities for this purpose. A Gentile wishing to become a Jew must also be totally immersed. Many people don't know that. In addition, a male must be circumcised. Now you say, whoa, wait a minute. It's a ritual circumcision. It's not the same thing that happens to a little baby when they're born. And of course, so while the temple was still in existing, an offering was required of both men and women, but the outstanding feature is the baptism declared by Hillel to be a decisive ceremony of conversion to Judaism. And in fact, even in the Reform movement, we had several people that did convert to Judaism in the past years, and of course we didn't have a mikveh. Did they go up to Pensacola or somewhere? Home, yeah, pool even. And the rabbi does says some blessings and stuff like that. But that's after they've already made the commitment to convert and they've gone through all the training and teaching and stuff like that. Are Jews missionary-minded? In a sense, no. We believe that anyone, whether he's Jew or not, may achieve salvation through the ethical commitment to a one God, and therefore Judaism does not have the same missionary purposes as other religions might have. Conversion is, of course, much simpler in Reformed Judaism than Orthodox Judaism, and of course, in Orthodox Judaism, it is discouraged, especially when it's thought to be for the purpose of marriage or without sincerity. In Orthodox Judaism, the person is refused 3 times. He'll come to that rabbi and say, I want to convert. No, get out of here. Maybe he won't say it like that. But refused. If he keeps coming back, then they'll start the process of conversion. And it takes a lot longer with an Orthodox thing. It's a rigid period of instruction after which he is immersed and is called a Jew. As far as the concept of man, as I mentioned, Jews do not believe man is born with original sin. He has the ability to choose good or bad. So he's not born with this original sin. On the other hand, they do not believe that man is born good either. Man is born free and with the capacity to choose between good and evil. No man is blamed for what others have done. Each man is accountable for himself. I mentioned about intermarriage. Basically, most Jews are opposed to intermarriage for obvious reasons. It dilutes the religion, and it's more difficult to raise children in a mixed marriage home. Many rabbis, when they start counseling somebody with a mixed marriage, the first thing they're going to say is, how are you going to raise the kids? And some rabbis will say, if you're not going to raise the kid Jewish, whether the mother or the father is Jewish, doesn't matter. You know, sorry, I won't do it. Now, there are some rabbis that will not even officiate at a mixed marriage ceremony. Definitely Orthodox won't. You might find some conservative rabbis. When my youngest boy got married, we tried to find a rabbi that would marry him. Couldn't get one. Couldn't get one. My daughter-in-law's father is at that time, he was active duty, a lieutenant general, 3 stars. So we figured, oh, no problem here. We'll just call Fort Bragg. They have a chaplain, woman chaplain, rabbi. Got turned down. Turned down. She flat out won't do it. That's it. So I had a very good friend who's a minister, and he performed the ceremony from the New Testament, because obviously we had family from both sides, and the Old Testament, wonderful ceremony, really good. But the point is, she wouldn't do it. Now, you hire a rabbi, like in Pensacola, they just hired a rabbi. In a Reformed temple, one of the first things, if not, well, other things also, but one of the questions they're going to ask that rabbi is, will you perform interfaith marriages? In some Reformed temples, if that rabbi says no, name goes to the bottom of the list. Because in this society, that's the name of the game. You got to bring people in. You got to be inclusive. And the only way to be inclusive is to let people marry interfaith. I mentioned about the relationship between American Jews and Israel. I want to point out that this is supplemental to the loyalty to this country. And that gives them the citizenship here. Jews in the United States are intensely loyal Americans, and in many contributions to our way of life are simple, ample testimony to their devotion to this country. I'd like to point out, I read a book called G.I. Jew. Great book if you want to find out how Jews were treated in World War II. And it points out, based on population, percent of population, male population of Jews, more Jews served in the army or the services than way above their percentage in the United States. Why? Well, I guess you could surmise they all wanted to go over and fight the Nazis. Not all of them did, obviously. So Jews in World War II won medals right through up and including the Medal of Honor. The status in America, I don't need to say more, except that this is where we're accepted. There's been no problems at all. You know, maybe back during the Civil War, General Grant issued some stupid order that Lincoln rescinded right away about Jews coming down into the South. He didn't want them in there, carpetbaggers, and I think they were called at that time. But that order, that's an interesting thing. Look up Grant and Jews Civil War. And he became president, too, afterwards, Grant. Well, doubt. Can a Jew doubt God's existence and still be a good Jew? Well, belief in God is difficult. And, you know, a crisis of faith, well, you know, that's to be expected. I know several people who just say, you know, I just can't believe in this thing called God. You know, but yet they follow all the tenets of Judaism, treating people, charity, and all these other things, treating people well. And there are about 4 reasons that I found, significant reasons why doubts about God exist. Judaism emphasizes deed over creed. How are you doing? Judaism stresses action more than faith. The Talmud teaches that God attributes to God a declaration which is probably unique among religious writings. Better that a Jew abandon me, but follow my laws. According to Judaism, one can be a good Jew while doubting God's existence, as long as one acts in accordance with Jewish law. But the converse is not true. For a Jew who believes in God, but acts contrary to Jewish law, cannot be considered a good Jew. Of course, Jews do not deny the centrality of God in Judaism, but merely to emphasize that Judaism, you can appreciate it and practice Judaism independently of your level of belief in God. You can incorporate Judaism in your everyday life through study, practice, even while doubting God's existence, because study and practice in and of themselves are very valuable to individual and society. Absolute certainty in faith leads to fanaticism. Well, if you're so fanatical about things, a famous rabbi, Manuel Rachman, one of the foremost Orthodox rabbis of our time, said, Judaism encourages doubt even as it enjoins faith and commitment. A Jew dare not live with absolute certainty, because certainty is the hallmark of fanatic, and Judaism abhors fanaticism, and because doubt is good for the human soul, it's humility. Now, who knows this, as he points out, better than modern people who have had to cope with dogmatic fascism, communism, and if you go way back, obviously, Nazism. If God were known, moral choice would end. Well, if you know that a cop is down the street, you're not going to speed. Judaism says you have to make those choices between good and evil, between good and bad. In order to choose good, you must feel free to choose bad. So you have that choice. God was, let's see here. Okay, that's it. Let's see. Since God's existence is unprovable, doubt is natural. I think that goes without saying. God cannot be known to exist in the sense that we know a table or a cat or anything else. The existence, those things are physical, and you could demonstrate them. But God possesses no physical qualities, so it's he or she is supernatural, metaphysical, infinite. This is a good one, and then see if you could take some questions. I always get this question, and it bothers me no end. In fact, I wrote about it in the bulletin that the temple puts out this month. If Judaism is supposed to make people better, how do you account for unethical religious Jews and for ethical people who are not religious? What comes to your mind right away? Bernie Madoff. Huh? Yeah, Tammy Faye Baker. Yeah. You say, these are people. How do you account for that? And let me tell you, when I listen to, what is that called, American Greed? I think there's a program called American Greed. I listen to it all the time. And when a name comes up that sounds Jewish, I get embarrassed. Why? Because I think somebody is thinking, oh, you know, Jewish people, you know. Well, so let's take a look at that statement. Well, the problem, as I said, disturbs every sensitive Jew is the existence of Jews who observe many of the laws. In fact, there was, back in the 80s, I believe it was, there was a Jewish person called Marty Siegel. I wrote about it in my article. And he was convicted of insider trading and big philanthropist and pretty well an Orthodox Jew. And the headline was, and they pinned it up on the bulletin board at work, it said, Marty Siegel convicted. You know, and you know, everyone is reading that. But you know, right away, people were thinking, well, gee whiz, you know, a Jewish person does that. But as you pointed out, other people do it also, and they're religious. There were some other Christians, I forget who they were, besides that.
Well, many of the
Televangelists, yes, yeah. So, but it's a crucial problem because it is the existence of such people that often serves to invalidate religion in the eyes of others. And that doesn't matter whether you're Jewish, Christian, or whatever. And it makes it easy to dismiss religion as mechanical rituals and hypocrisy. But the premise of the question is an error. For a Jew is not religious if he or she does not observe the Jewish laws of ethics and goodness. To anyone familiar with Judaism, this statement is obviously true, as is the statement that a citizen of the United States is not considered law-abiding if he violates half of the American legal code. We feel compelled to state this because of the unfortunate fact that religion is often associated in people's mind solely between the acts of people and God. In Judaism, it's between people and people. I'm going to hold this one. Well, let's see if I could do it. Yeah, that's right. It takes both of them, paper too. Judaism on one foot. There is the story in the Talmud that is often told when someone is asked to summarize the essence of Judaism. During the 1st century BCE, a great rabbi named Hillel was asked to sum up Judaism while standing on one foot. He replied, "Certainly, what is hateful to you, do not do to your neighbors. That is the Torah. The rest is commentary. Now go and study." Hence, at its core, Judaism is concerned with the well-being of humanity. The particulars of every Jew's individual belief system is the commentary. How much time do we have?
15 minutes.
Okay, real quick. Jewish holidays. Lots of good ones. I'm going to go for the majors first. Okay? Coming up pretty soon, March 25th, is Pesach, Passover. Great holiday. Love it. This year we're having our Seder, as we did last year, at the base. And Pesach means Passover. It refers to Exodus 12:23, when God passed over the Israelites. Celebrates God's liberation of the Israelites from Egypt, bondage, and probably it's the single most theological important holiday in the Jewish calendar. It lasts 8 days. Most of the time, Reformed Jews celebrate it the 1st and the 2nd. That's about it. Pesach, you got to say it. It starts in the evening of March 25th this year. Foods, traditional Jews eat no bread, leavened food on Passover, and do eat matzah. That's corrugated cardboard. No, but it's good. In fact, I buy several boxes of it because I like mixing it with eggs, you know, and stuff. I call the matzah broth. It includes things like matzo balls, gotta have that, gefilte fish. You know, it's hard catching gefiltes. No, actually, it's just a mixture of pike and whitefish, and a lot of Jews don't like it. I sort of like it, because my mother used to make it, and I used to have to grind the fish in those little things where you had a little wooden thing, that, you know, stuff like that. Sponge cake, cookies, stuff like that. Observant Jews don't eat bread and leavened food. And in fact, in an observant household, you'll have several sets of dishes. 4. You'll have normal dishes, and you'll have dishes what they call familchits and fleischits. Meat, milk, and meat. So you can have 2 separate dishes. Now comes Passover, and you got to clean the whole house out to make sure you don't have any leavened bread or any crumbs sitting around. And you got to get rid of those dishes too. So you put those dishes away, and now you bring out your dishes for Passover. You know, again, milkits, fleischits, stuff like that. So we used to do that. It was a lot of fun. We don't eat bread. We tell the story of the Exodus. It's a major holiday that we take off from work. Well, not really. Symbols of the holiday, you know, down there. Horseradish. My wife had an aunt that made horseradish that would take the top of your head off. I mean,
Is this when Elijah comes to visit?
say again?
Elijah,
Is this when Elijah comes to visit?
Yeah, I think we set out a cup, if I remember right. Yeah,
We keep the door
yeah.
open.
We keep the door open. And there's little games we play. We hide a piece of matzah, what they call the afikomen, and the kids run around, tear up the building, trying to find it, and they get a prize. It's a fairly happy holiday.
What is the significance of Elijah?
He would be ushering in the Messiah,
Okay.
if I recall right.
So he's like a forerunner?
Yeah, like a forerunner. Hey, he's coming. Let's see here. Get to the major holidays here. So many minor ones. Here's a minor one. I want that one. Big holiday that we all know. Rosh Hashanah, Hebrew name head of the year, idiomatically New Year. What's it about? Solemn holiday, beginning the calendar year with repentance from sin and hope of renewal, pronounced, some say Rosh Hashanah, like it's one word, and some say Rosh Hashanah. When it starts, September 4th this year, foods, apple, honey, you notice again foods, big thing. Challah, which is the braided bread with raisins, honey, pomegranates, pumpkins. Many Jews who never show up, this is like Easter now, right? Many Jews, when I come to temple, I come up to people and say, oh, are you new here? Yeah, well, I've been here a member for 20 years. You know, so that'll give you an idea. Many Jews who never show up at the synagogue the rest of the year go for the marathon of synagogue services, Rosh Hashanah, and right through to Yom Kippur, which I'll mention in a moment. One special activity they don't want to miss is the sounding of the shofar. That's the ram's horn. Fantastic. We have several people that could burst your eardrums doing that. Great. Probably the most important activity comes between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And this is when I talk about this one-to-one relationship, not only between myself and God, but between myself and you, and you, and you, Christians and Jews, business people, it doesn't matter. It's, you try to repair relationships and make apologies for bad behavior in the previous year. It's the time to mend relationships. Symbols, the shofar, obviously. Greetings, you could say Happy New Year. I get tremendous amount of cards, not only from my Jewish friends, but from Christian friends. Happy New Year. You know, things like that. They sell the cards. Shana Tova, again, just in Hebrew. Yeah, Shana Tova, Taki Tavu, may you be inscribed for a good year in the book of life. Yiddish-speaking Jews say Good Yom Tov. Yiddish is sort of a slang German or Hebrew too. Okay, then we come to the most solemn holiday in the Jewish calendar. The Day of Atonement. It's a fast day. There are other fast days within the Jewish calendar. Some people will observe. Most people will observe these one way or another. Some people say Yom Kippur, some say Yom Kippur. I like the Yom Kippur. To me, there you go. When it starts, again, September 13th, foods, obviously none this time, but at the end of that fast, at the end of the service, we have something at our temple and many temples called Break the Fast. And let me tell you, the lox and everything else just flows. I mean, people are hungry by that time. But nothing is universal. Children under 13 or any people that have health problems, obviously, don't have to fast. In addition to all the negatives involved in fasting, not eating, drinking, not washing, not wearing leather, not having sexual relations, there are a lot of things to do on Yom Kippur. Mainly, there are a lot of traditional prayers read in the synagogue. For a lot of Jews who aren't very observant, Yom Kippur is special because it's the day you go to memorial service called Yiska. And it's, in fact, when we set the menu or the program up for that, we'll say, I think it's somewhere around 2 o'clock or so, I think, if I remember right. Yiska, that's where you say prayers for deceased parents, sons, daughters, whatever. More to honor dead relatives. White clothing, sneakers are worn because you don't want anything with leather because of the prohibition. Greetings, you can say Happy New Year or have an easy fast. Most people say have an easy fast. Some say Shana Tova, which is Happy New Year. The most solemn holiday of the calendar. Well, we got things like Sukkah, meaning the tabernacle, booths of tabernacle. In ancient times when the temple stood in Jerusalem, there was a pilgrimage holiday to celebrate the harvest. So you got Sukkah. This year it's September 18th. So that's another holiday. Foods also. Simchat Torah, the rejoicing of the Torah. At the end of Sukkah, there is one more holiday to celebrate finishing the reading of the Torah. When we finally get through with that book and read it all in 1 year, we'll have this celebration, reading of from the Torah scrolls, and then they rewind it, and stuff like that. Very good holiday. It's a long service. People get up and proceed around the building with the scrolls and then dance with them. And the Orthodox really do this up big, this holiday. Again, no special foods, but just scrumptious meals. That's all. Hanukkah, yes. Kids love this holiday because for 8 days they can get gifts. Well, they're not going to get the biggies, let me tell you. At least our kids didn't. Dedication, what's it about? Hanukkah is an 8-day holiday, commemorates the Jewish recapture and rededication of the temple in Jerusalem. And you may have seen this last December, several displays in New York City have the big candelabras and stuff like that. Starts the evening November 27th, falls out during Thanksgiving this year. So a lot of families will be celebrating both. Fried food, especially potato pancakes called latkes. We just finished our last batch. My brother makes several hundreds of latkes and for his temple and freezes them. And we had several packages. We just went through the last package last night. Deli donuts, lighting of the candles in the ceremonial lamp called a Hanukkah or Hanukkah menorah, playing with a top called a dreidel, little game. Is another fun tradition. It's a minor holiday in the sense that there's no requirement to abstain from work. The menorah, the candles, the dreidel. There's a gentleman in Blue Water Bay who puts on a big display, Christmas display, and he has a Hanukkah menorah there also. Oh, wait a minute. Did I forget? Oh, yeah. I forgot the most important holiday of all. And this one is celebrated every Friday, Shabbat, although the English word comes from Sabbath. A day of rest and enjoyment at the end of every week that religious people undertake. I remember in our home, it was always celebrated on Friday night. We take out the best dishes. My wife would, not my wife, my mother would make chicken soup and chicken, and the house would smell of all these great aromas and stuff like that. And we'd all sit around a table and say a couple prayers, etc. Once a week, lasts about 18 minutes, not a big deal, before sundown on Friday until an hour after sundown on Saturday. Religious Jews won't do any work, obviously. They won't even light a light switch. That's work. They won't answer the phone, things like that. And of course, symbols, candles, challah, wine, flour, again, food. And let's see here. Holocaust Remembrance Day, I mentioned that. That's will be that. Then we celebrate somebody's birthday because there's really a lot of intermarriage. So within families, you're going to have celebrating a Jewish boy's birthday. So you're going to have that too. Okay, I could take some questions again. Yeah.
If someone wanted to attend classes at the temple,
Okay, you bring up a point that we're doing right now, with the Connecticut shooting and everything. We just formed a security committee because we've had 2 incidences in the last that, without going into details, worried a lot of people. Nothing big, nothing big. Nothing that we had to report to the police that we couldn't handle ourselves. But, with the shootings and everything else, so we're reevaluating our guest policy. And the only thing is you're more than welcome to come. Don't get me wrong. Except that if the board passes it, there'll be a form that someone has to fill out. Just your name,
you will be frisked at the door?
No, right. Hey, some temples are spending tens and tens of thousands of dollars. We're talking the big temples in the big cities, obviously, with security, cameras, swipe cards, punch stuff. And, hey, look, that's the time that we're doing it. But no, we get classes coming in from the college, religion classes, comparative religion classes, and we put on them. One of our members takes out the Torah, explains everything, and because some of them are writing papers, for that. So no, you're more than welcome.
Do you have study classes every Saturday?
Saturday is Torah study.
Okay.
Most people, if they want to come in, we have no policy right now, but we probably will have some type of policy.
About what time would that be?
We started at 10 o'clock.
10 in the morning.
10 o'clock. And we'll just go over the next portion.
And the temple is on
Beale, south of the Beale Cemetery, on what they call Nature's Trail there. Like I said, it's the only one in town. Okay, other questions? I hope. Gee, I answered everything. Well, I want to thank you because, again,
I do have
yes.
one. I think we all know about Moses and freeing Jewish people
Yeah.
from Egypt and all that. But at that time, they were considered of the Jewish faith. Who started the Jewish faith?
You got to remember, Joseph came to Egypt during the famine. When he interpreted the Pharaoh's dream of 7 years of harvest, 7 years of famine. And right after that, the whole, I use a Yiddish word called mishpucha, it means the whole family started coming. And they just grew and grew within Egypt because they were treated real nice by the pharaohs. But then, I forget which pharaoh, Ramses certainly, but at some point, the pharaohs saying, gee, we got all these people living here. If we get attacked, they're like a fifth column, you might say, right in our midst. We got to do something about this. And so they made them slaves and stuff like that. So, but they just started coming to Egypt, and they prospered. They multiplied and prospered. That, you might say that might be the problem at that point, yeah.
Does Judaism predate Abraham?
No, I think Abraham, again, I'm not being a scholar, I think Abraham was, you might say, the first Jew. Yeah, because he spoke to God, or the angels came down and whatever on that, yeah. Well, I certainly want to thank you all. You made me more aware of my religion. Thank you.